Nothing like the smell of burnt oil and betrayal to start your week. My name's Brent Morrison, and I've been fixing cars for 23 years. Engines don't lie to you. They break down honest, tell you exactly what's wrong, and when you fix them right, they purr like grateful cats. People? Well, that's a different story entirely. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It was a Tuesday morning when I first caught the scent of trouble brewing in my own backyard. I was under the hood of Mrs. Patterson's ancient Honda Civic, cursing at a stubborn alternator bolt when my phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "Babe, can we talk tonight? Important stuff about the wedding." Lila Chen, my fiancée of 8 months, bartender at Murphy's Dive on 5th Street, and apparently the woman who was about to turn my world upside down. She had this way of making important stuff sound like either great news or complete disaster, with no middle ground. I wiped my greasy hands on my coveralls and glanced around my garage. Anwar's auto repair wasn't much to look at. 3 bays, a cramped office, and enough motor oil stains on the concrete to qualify as modern art. But it was honest work, and my boss, Mahmoud Anwar, treated me fair. Better than fair, actually. The old Lebanese guy had been talking about selling me the place when he retired. "Morrison, you planning to marry that alternator or fix it?" Anwar's voice carried across the garage, thick with his accent and thicker with amusement. "Working on it, boss." I twisted the wrench harder than necessary. The bolt finally gave way, and I felt that familiar satisfaction of metal surrendering to persistence. That evening, I drove home to the little ranch house I'd been renting for 3 years. Lila's beat-up Corolla was already in the driveway, which meant she'd gotten off work early. That should have been my first warning sign. Lila never left Murphy's before closing time, not when there were tips to be made. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at my scratched-up table with her laptop open and paper scattered everywhere. She looked up when I walked in, and I caught something in her expression. Excitement, mixed with guilt, like a kid who'd been caught with her hand in the cookie jar but found something better than cookies. "Hey, babe." She stood up and kissed my cheek, but it felt perfunctory, distracted. "How was work?" "Same as always. Fix things that were broken." I nodded toward the mess on my table. "What's all this?" "Wedding planning stuff, and, well, I had an idea." She tucked a strand of black hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I'd learned to recognize. "You know how we've been talking about money being tight for the honeymoon?" I hadn't been talking about that at all. The wedding was going to be small, just immediate family and close friends at the community center, with Murphy's catering the reception. Total cost, maybe $3,000. I had that covered, plus another $2,000 saved for a week in Florida afterward. But Lila had been dropping hints about wanting something bigger, fancier. "What kind of idea?" I asked, though something in my gut was already clenching. She turned the laptop toward me. Facebook Marketplace was open, and I was looking at a listing that made me freeze. 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback, fully restored, $18,000 OBO. Below the description was a photo of my car, my baby, the Highland Green Beauty I'd spent 4 years, and every spare dollar bringing back to life. "Lila," my voice came out flat and dangerous. "What the hell is this?" "Now don't get mad." She held up her hands like she was trying to calm a wild animal. "Just hear me out. I know that car means a lot to you, but think about what we could do with $18,000. We could have the wedding of our dreams, go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, maybe even put a down payment on a house." I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. "You listed my car for sale without asking me? I haven't sold it yet. This is just testing the waters, seeing what kind of interest there is. And look." She clicked to show me the messages. "I've already got 5 people asking about it. One guy wants to come look at it tomorrow." The kitchen felt like it was tilting. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "That car isn't for sale, Lila. It's never been for sale." "But babe, it's just sitting in the garage most of the time. You drive your truck to work, you drive your truck everywhere. When's the last time you even took the Mustang out?" "That's not the point." I was struggling to keep my voice level. "That car it's not just transportation. It's 4 years of my life. It's every weekend I spent tracking down original parts, every evening I spent sanding and painting and rebuilding that engine from scratch." "I get that, I really do. But we're about to be married. Shouldn't we be making decisions together? Shouldn't our future be more important than some old car?" Some old car. She might as well have called my mother some old woman. I walked over to the laptop and closed it. "Take down the listing." "Brent, please, just think about it." "Take it down, Lila." She sighed dramatically, the way she did when she thought I was being unreasonable. "Fine, but we still need to talk about money. The wedding I want, the honeymoon I want, it's going to cost more than what you've saved. Then maybe you want the wrong things. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a backfiring engine. Lila's face went through several expressions: hurt, anger, calculation. She settled on wounded innocence. I can't believe you just said that. I'm trying to plan our future, and you're more worried about some car than making me happy. I wanted to explain that it wasn't about the car, not really. It was about respect. It was about asking before you made decisions that affected both of us. It was about understanding that some things couldn't be measured in dollars and cents. Instead, I said, I'm going to check on the Mustang. I walked through the house to the attached garage and hit the light switch. There she was, gleaming under the fluorescent bulbs like a green jewel. Every curve perfect. Every detail exactly as Ford had intended back in 1967. The Highland green paint job had taken me 6 months to get right, wet sanding between coats until the finish was deep enough to swim in. I ran my hand along the hood and felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. This car had saved my sanity after my divorce from my first wife. When everything else in my life was falling apart, I had this project, something I could control, something I could make better. Behind me, I heard Lila's footsteps on the concrete. I took down the listing, she said quietly. Thank you. But I still think we need to have a serious conversation about priorities. I turned to look at her. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, looking like she was the reasonable one in this situation. You're right, I said. We do. The next morning at work, I was distracted. I kept thinking about the look on Lila's face when she'd shown me that listing, not apologetic or hesitant, but excited, like she'd already spent the money in her head. You look like someone stole your lunch money, said Tyler Kowalski, dropping by the garage around 10 with coffee and donuts. Tyler was my best friend, a former Cleveland cop who now worked private security. We'd known each other since high school, and he had an annoying talent for reading my moods. Relationship troubles, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. The lovely Lila giving you grief? I told him about the car listing. Tyler listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. Normally he'd be cracking jokes or offering unwanted advice by now. That's cold, he said finally, even for someone who doesn't understand cars. She thinks I'm being unreasonable. Maybe you are. Tyler held up a hand before I could protest. Hear me out. I'm not saying she was right to list it without asking. That's messed up. But from her perspective, you've got 18 grand sitting in your garage while she's planning a wedding on a tight budget. The budget's not that tight. For the wedding she wants? I didn't have a good answer for that. Lila had been showing me pictures from bridal magazines, talking about venues that cost more for one night than I made in 2 months. Maybe that's the real problem, Tyler continued. You two want different things. Question is, are you willing to compromise? That evening, Lila was waiting for me with dinner, takeout Chinese from our favorite place. Peace offerings usually came in white cardboard containers in our relationship. I've been thinking about what you said, she began as we ate, about priorities. Yeah? Maybe we can find a middle ground. What if we didn't sell the car, but we took out a loan against it, use it as collateral for a wedding loan? I nearly choked on my lo mein. You want to put my car up as collateral? It's just temporary. We pay back the loan, we keep the car, everyone wins. And if something happens and we can't make the payments? Nothing's going to happen. We're both working. We're responsible people. I set down my chopsticks. Lila, why is this so important to you? The big wedding, I mean. She was quiet for a long moment, pushing rice around her container. You wouldn't understand. Try me. I've been to 17 weddings in the last 3 years. 17. All my friends, all my cousins, everyone's getting married and having these beautiful, perfect days. And every time I sit there thinking about what mine will be like. She looked up at me. I don't want to be embarrassed, Brent. I don't want people thinking we couldn't afford to do it right. People who care about us won't think that. You don't know what it's like. You had your big wedding already. That stung. My first marriage had ended badly. My ex-wife had cleaned out our joint account and moved to Phoenix with her yoga instructor. The wedding had been expensive and elaborate, and it hadn't meant a damn thing in the end. That big wedding didn't save my first marriage, I said. This is different. We're different. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But something about this whole conversation felt wrong, like trying to force the wrong part into an engine. It might fit, but it was going to cause problems down the road. I need time to think about it, I said. Lila smiled, and for the first time in days, it looked genuine. That's all I'm asking for. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to her breathe beside me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being maneuvered into something, and in my experience, when someone was pushing that hard for something, it usually wasn't for the reasons they claimed. I was about to find out just how right I was. 3 days later, I was elbow deep in the engine bay of a 2015 Chevy Silverado when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Maddie Walsh, Lila's best friend and partner in whatever scheme was currently brewing. "Brent, thank God you answered." Maddie sounded breathless, excited. I need to ask you something, but you have to promise not to tell Lila I called." I straightened up, wiping my hands on a rag. Maddie was the kind of person who thrived on drama and secrets. If she was calling me directly, something was definitely up. "What's going on, Maddie?" "It's about the wedding planning. Lila's she's been making some decisions without talking to you, and I think you should know about them." My stomach dropped. "What kind of decisions?" "She booked the Riverside Ballroom for the reception. The whole package, open bar, sit-down dinner, live band. She put down a deposit yesterday." The Riverside Ballroom? I'd looked into that place when we first got engaged. The cheapest package was $12,000. "How big a deposit?" I asked. $2,000. She said you guys had talked about it, but something in her voice... Maddie trailed off. "Look, I love Lila like a sister, but she's been acting weird lately, secretive, and she's been spending a lot of time at Rico's gym." Rico Moretti. I knew the name. He managed Gold's Gym downtown, where Lila had started working out 6 months ago. She'd mentioned him a few times, always in passing. Just Rico this, Rico that. Nothing that seemed important at the time. "What do you mean, spending time there?" "I mean, she's there every day, sometimes twice a day. And last week when we went shopping, she got 3 calls from him. 3 calls, Brent. Who needs to talk to their trainer that much?" The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't like. "Maddie, are you trying to tell me something specific?" "I'm trying to tell you to pay attention. That's all. Just pay attention." She hung up, leaving me staring at my phone and feeling like the ground was shifting under my feet. That evening, I decided to surprise Lila at Murphy's. She'd been working late most nights, coming home after I was already in bed. Quality time together was becoming rare, and maybe that was part of the problem? Murphy's Dive was exactly what it sounded like. A neighborhood bar with sticky floors, dim lighting, and the kind of regulars who knew each other's life stories. Lila had been working there for 2 years, and she was good at it. She remembered everyone's drink, laughed at their jokes, and somehow made even the loneliest customer feel like they had a friend. I walked in around 9:30, expecting to find her behind the bar. Instead, the bartender was Danny, a college kid who usually only worked weekends. Hey, Brent," Danny called out. "Looking for Lila?" "Yeah, is she in the back?" Danny looked confused. "She left around 7, said she had wedding stuff to take care of." Wedding stuff. At 7:30 on a Thursday night. I thanked Danny and walked back to my truck, my mind racing. Lila had told me she was working until closing. She'd kissed me goodbye that morning and said she wouldn't be home until after midnight. I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes, trying to decide what to do. I could drive home and wait for her. I could call and ask where she was. Or I could do something I'd never done before in our relationship. I could check up on her. Gold's Gym was 15 minutes away. I told myself I was just going to drive by, see if her car was there. Nothing creepy or controlling about it, just satisfying my curiosity. Her Corolla was in the parking lot, along with maybe a dozen other cars. The gym stayed open until 11, so that wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the way my hands were shaking as I parked across the street. Through the big windows, I could see people working out, running on treadmills, lifting weights, doing whatever people do in gyms. I'd never been much for organized fitness. My workout came from wrestling with stubborn car parts and hauling around engines. I was about to leave when I saw them. Lila and a guy I assumed was Rico were in what looked like the gym's office area, visible through an interior window. They were sitting close together on a couch, and Lila was laughing at something he'd said. Her hand was on his arm. It could have been innocent. Probably was innocent. But the way she was looking at him, the way she was leaning into his space, it was the way she used to look at me. I sat there for another 10 minutes, watching them talk. At one point, Rico got up and came back with 2 bottles of water. When he handed one to Lila, his fingers lingered on hers. My phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "Crazy busy night. Won't be home until late. Love you." I stared at the message, then looked back at the gym window. Lila was still on the couch, still laughing, still touching Rico's arm. I drove home and sat in my garage with the Mustang, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe I was turning into one of those paranoid, controlling guys who saw threats everywhere. But deep down, I knew what I'd witnessed. I'd seen the beginning of the end of my relationship, and I hadn't even realized the countdown had started. The next morning, Lila was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note saying she had errands to run before work. No kiss goodbye, no see you tonight. Just a hastily scrawled note on the kitchen counter. I got to the garage early and threw myself into work, but I couldn't concentrate. Every car that came in seemed to have the same problem. Something that looked fine on the surface but was rotting from the inside out. Around noon, Tyler stopped by with lunch. "You look like hell," he said, handing me a sandwich. "Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel better." "Seriously, what's wrong? You've been weird all week." I told him about the ballroom deposit, about Maddie's call, about what I'd seen at the gym. Tyler listened without interrupting, his cop instincts kicking in. "Could be innocent," he said when I finished, "but you don't think it is. I think you need more information before you do anything stupid." "Like what?" "Like confronting her based on suspicion and circumstantial evidence. If she's cheating, you'll know soon enough. If she's not, you'll look like a paranoid asshole." Tyler was right, but waiting felt impossible. I wanted answers, and I wanted them now. "There's something else," I said. "The money for that ballroom deposit? Where did she get $2,000? She's got a job. A bartender's job, and she's been talking about money being tight for months." Tyler raised an eyebrows. "You thinking she got it from Rico?" "I'm thinking I don't know where my fiancé is getting money for wedding expenses she can't afford." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Lila's things. Not everything, just the stuff she'd left lying around the house. Her laptop was password protected, but her tablet wasn't. What I found made me freeze. Text messages with Rico going back 3 months. Not just friendly trainer-client stuff, but flirty, intimate conversations. Photos she'd sent him, not naked, but suggestive. Pictures of herself in workout clothes with captions like, "Getting stronger for you." And then I found the conversation that changed everything. Rico: "When are you going to tell him?" Lila: "After the wedding. I need the financial security first." Rico: "This is messed up, babe. The guy's planning a future with you." Lila: "The guy's boring and predictable. You're exciting. But exciting doesn't pay for the kind of life I want." Rico: "So you're using him." Lila: "I'm being practical. Once we're married, I'll have access to everything. The house, the business, that stupid car he loves so much. Then I can leave and take half." Rico: "What about the car? You said you might sell it for the wedding." Lila: "I'm working on that. He's being stubborn, but I'll wear him down. 18 grand would pay for a hell of a honeymoon. For us, not him." I sat there staring at the screen, reading the messages over and over again. The woman I'd been planning to marry, the woman I'd been worried about losing, had been planning to use me from the beginning. The wedding wasn't about love or commitment. It was about getting legal access to my assets so she could clean me out and run off with her gym trainer boyfriend. I thought about the ballroom deposit, about her pushing me to use the car as collateral, about all the late nights and secret phone calls. It all made sense now. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Then I closed the tablet and sat back in my kitchen chair, feeling strangely calm. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called Tyler. "Remember what you said about getting more information before I did anything stupid?" "Yeah." "Well, I got the information, and now I'm going to do something that might look stupid but is actually pretty smart." "Brent, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that my fiancée is planning to marry me, take half my stuff, and run off with her trainer. And I'm talking about the fact that she's about to try to sell my car without my permission to pay for a wedding that's really just an elaborate theft." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "You sure about this?" "I've got screenshots of her texts. She's been playing me for months." "Okay, what do you want to do?" I looked out the window at my driveway, where Lila's car would be pulling in soon. She'd come home with stories about her day, kiss my cheek, and probably bring up the car loan idea again. She'd play the loving fiancé while planning my financial destruction. "I want to give her exactly what she's asking for," I said. "I want to let her sell the car." "Brent, trust me on this one, Tyler. I've got a plan." That evening, Lila came home with takeout pizza and a smile that would have fooled me completely if I hadn't read her texts. "How was your day, babe?" she asked, kissing my cheek like nothing had changed. "Pretty good. Yours?" "Busy. Had to meet with the wedding planner about final details." She set the pizza box on the table and got us plates. "Oh, and I talked to that loan officer about using the Mustang as collateral." Of course she had. "What did they say?" They'd approve us for $25,000 based on the car's appraised value. We could pay for the whole wedding and have money left over for the honeymoon. I nodded thoughtfully, like I was considering it. $25,000 is a lot of money. It is, and the payments would only be about $400 a month. We could easily handle that. What she didn't say, but what I now knew, was that she wouldn't be around to help with those payments. She'd be in Hawaii or wherever with Rico, and I'd be stuck paying for the wedding that ended my marriage. You know what? I said, taking a bite of pizza. Maybe you're right about the car. Lila's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Really? I've been thinking about what you said, about priorities, about our future. Maybe it is time to let go of the past and focus on what's ahead. The smile that spread across her face was radiant and completely fake. Oh, Brent, I'm so glad you're seeing it that way. We're going to have the most amazing wedding. I'm sure we will. I reached across the table and took her hand. In fact, why don't you go ahead and put the car back up for sale? If someone's willing to pay $18,000 cash, that might be better than a loan. Are you serious? Absolutely serious. Let's do this right. She jumped up and came around the table to hug me. This is going to be perfect. I love you so much. I love you too, I said, and for the first time in our relationship, I was lying. After dinner, Lila spent an hour on her laptop, reposting the Mustang listing and responding to messages. I sat next to her on the couch, watching her arrange my financial destruction with enthusiasm that was almost admirable. Look at this, she said, showing me her screen. I've got 4 people who want to come see it this weekend. One guy is driving up from Columbus. Great. When do you want to show it? How about Saturday morning? That way we can get this done and start planning how to spend the money. Sounds perfect. That night, after Lila fell asleep, I went out to the garage and spent some time with the Mustang. I ran my hands over the paint job I'd spent months perfecting, sat in the driver's seat I'd reupholstered myself, and listened to the engine I'd rebuilt from scratch. Sorry, girl, I whispered. This is going to get a little complicated. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day making preparations. First, I went to the DMV and got a duplicate title. Told them I'd lost the original. Then I visited my lawyer, Jim Patterson, who'd handled my divorce. I need some advice about property rights, I told him. What kind of property? A car. If someone tries to sell a car that's titled in my name only, what happens? Jim leaned back in his chair. Well, legally, they can't sell it without your permission. If they try, it's theft. Grand theft, if the car's worth more than $1,000. What if we're engaged? Doesn't matter. Engagement doesn't confer property rights. If your name's on the title and you didn't give permission for the sale, it's theft. And if someone accepts money for a car they don't own, that's fraud. Both the seller and the buyer could face charges, though the buyer might get off if they can prove they didn't know the seller wasn't the rightful owner. I thanked Jim and left his office with a much clearer picture of what was about to happen. My next stop was the police station, where I had a conversation with Detective Maria Santos, a friend of Tyler's who worked fraud cases. Hypothetically, I said, if someone was planning to sell my car without permission and I had evidence of their intent, what would you recommend? Hypothetically, she replied with a knowing smile. I'd recommend you document everything and call us when the crime is actually in progress. Attempted theft is still theft. And if the person was my fiancé? Theft is theft, regardless of the relationship, though I'd probably recommend couples counseling too. That evening, Lila was practically bouncing with excitement. She'd scheduled 3 showings for Saturday, 10 a.m., noon, and 2 p.m. The guy coming at noon is really interested, she said. He's got cash and wants to buy it immediately if he likes what he sees. That's great, honey. I'll make sure the car's clean and ready. Actually, I was thinking maybe you should make yourself scarce tomorrow. You know how you get about that car. All sentimental and protective. It might make the buyers nervous. I pretended to consider this. You're probably right. Maybe I'll go help Tyler with some project he's been talking about. Perfect. I'll handle everything. Saturday morning, I got up early and spent an hour detailing the Mustang. If this was going to be her last day in my garage, she was going to look her best. At 9:30, I called Tyler. It's showtime, I said. You sure about this? I'm sure. Just be ready when I call. I kissed Lila goodbye and drove my truck to the parking lot of a grocery store 3 blocks away. From there, I had a perfect view of my house and garage. At 10 a.m. sharp, a red pickup truck pulled into my driveway. A middle-aged guy in jeans and a polo shirt got out and walked up to the front door. Lila answered, all smiles, and led him to the garage. They spent about 20 minutes looking at the car. The guy popped the hood, checked the interior, even got down on his hands and knees to look at the undercarriage. Finally, he shook his head and left. Buyer number 1. Not interested. At noon, a silver sedan pulled up. This time it was a younger guy, maybe late 20s, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt. He looked like he had money. The same routine. Lila showed him the car. He inspected it thoroughly. But this time, the conversation went on longer. I could see them talking animatedly, and at one point, Lila went into the house and came back with what looked like paperwork. My phone rang. "Brent, great news. The buyer wants the car. He's got $18,000 in cash, and he wants to take it today." "That's fantastic," I said. "Did you sign anything yet?" "Just about to. He's got a bill of sale ready to go." "Okay, here's the thing. I just remembered I've got the title with me. I grabbed it this morning because I was going to double-check the VIN number. Can you have him wait about 10 minutes? I'm just around the corner." "Oh, okay, I'll tell him." I hung up and immediately called Tyler. "It's happening. Get Detective Santos and meet me at my house." "On our way." I drove home slowly, giving Tyler and Santos time to get there. When I pulled into my driveway, I could see Lila and the buyer standing next to the Mustang. She looked nervous, probably wondering why I'd come back. Tyler's car was parked across the street. I could see him and Detective Santos waiting. I got out of my truck and walked over to Lila and the buyer. "Sorry about that," I said, extending my hand to the buyer. "I'm Brent Morrison. This is my car." The buyer shook my hand. "Nice to meet you. I'm Dave Chen. Your fiancé says you're selling because of wedding expenses." "That's right." I looked at Lila, who was fidgeting with the bill of sale. "So, you're ready to make the purchase?" "Absolutely. I've got cash." Dave patted an envelope in his jacket pocket. $18,000, just like we discussed." "Great. Can I see the bill of sale?" Lila handed it over reluctantly. It was pretty standard. Description of the car, purchase price, buyer and seller information. What was interesting was the signature line. Lila had signed it Lila Morrison, using my last name, which wasn't legally hers yet. "There's just one small problem," I said. "Lila doesn't own this car." Dave looked confused. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and called Tyler. "We're ready." Tyler and Detective Santos got out of their car and walked over. Santos was in uniform, which made Dave take a step back. "What's going on?" he asked. "Mr. Chen," Detective Santos said. "I'm Detective Santos with Cleveland PD. We've received a report of attempted vehicle theft." Lila went pale. "Brent, what are you doing?" "I'm stopping you from stealing my car." I handed Detective Santos the bill of sale. "This woman is attempting to sell a vehicle she doesn't own to a buyer who's prepared to pay cash. She's forged my name on the paperwork and represented herself as the legal owner." "Is this true, ma'am?" Santos asked Lila. "It's not theft. We're engaged. We make decisions together." "Engagement doesn't confer ownership rights," Santos said. "Is your name on the title?" "No, but then you don't have the legal right to sell this vehicle." Dave was looking back and forth between us like he'd stumbled into a soap opera. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'll just go." "Actually, sir, I'm going to need to see that cash," Santos said. "If you were about to pay for stolen property, we need to document that." "It's not stolen property," Lila protested. "Tell them, Brent." I looked at my fiancé, my lying, cheating, scheming fiancé, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Detective Santos," I said, "I never gave this woman permission to sell my car. I never signed any paperwork authorizing the sale. She listed it online without my knowledge and arranged this sale without my consent. In my book, that's theft." Lila's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, desperation, and finally, calculation. "You bastard," she said quietly. "You set me up." "No, Lila, you set yourself up. I just gave you enough rope." Detective Santos was writing in her notebook. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. You're under arrest for attempted grand theft auto." As Santos read Lila her rights, I turned to Dave. "Sorry you got caught up in this. For what it's worth, she's a very convincing liar." Dave shook his head. "Man, I dodged a bullet. Thanks for stopping this before I handed over the money." Tyler clapped me on the shoulder. "Feel better?" "Getting there," I said, watching Santos put Lila in the back of her patrol car. As they drove away, I stood in my driveway looking at the Mustang. She was still mine, still beautiful, still the one thing in my life that had never lied to me. But this was just the beginning. Lila would make bail, probably by tonight. And when she did, she'd be angry, humiliated, looking for revenge. I was counting on it. Lila made bail 6 hours later, courtesy of Rico Moretti. I knew this because Tyler had a friend at the jail who called him when she was released. What I didn't expect was the phone call I got at 11 that night. "You son of a bitch." Her voice was shaking with rage. "You destroyed my life." "No, Lila. You did that all by yourself. I loved you. I was trying to plan our future, and you had me arrested like some common criminal." The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, caught red-handed, she was trying to play the victim. "I read your texts," I said. "All of them. I know about Rico. I know about your plan to take half my stuff after the wedding. So let's skip the part where you pretend this was about love." Silence on the other end. Then, "You went through my phone? Your tablet. You left it lying around. You had no right. I had every right. You were living in my house, planning to marry me under false pretenses. I'd say that gives me the right to know who I'm dealing with. This isn't over, Brent. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've started." She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, wondering if that was a threat or just the ranting of someone who'd been caught in a lie. I found out the next morning. I got to the garage at 7 a.m. to find all 4 tires on my truck slashed and asshole keyed into the paint on the driver's side door. The windows of the garage had been broken, and someone had spray-painted "thief" across the front of the building. Anwar was standing in the parking lot when I arrived, surveying the damage. "I'm sorry, boss," I said. "This is my fault." "Your fault someone vandalized my business?" I told him about Lila, about the arrest, about the phone call. Anwar listened without interrupting, his weathered face getting darker with each detail. "This woman," he said finally. "She is angry." "Yeah, she is. Angry people do stupid things. You call police?" "Already did. They're sending someone out." Officer Patricia Williams arrived 20 minutes later and took photos of the damage. She was thorough and professional, but I could tell she thought this was just another domestic dispute gone bad. "Any idea who might have done this?" she asked. "My ex-fiancée. She was arrested yesterday for trying to steal my car, made bail last night, and called me with threats around 11. "You want to press charges?" "Absolutely." Williams wrote up the report and promised to follow up with Lila and Rico. In the meantime, I had 4 flat tires and a garage that looked like a war zone. Tyler showed up while I was sweeping up broken glass. "Jesus," he said, looking around. She really went all out. This is just the opening act. She's humiliated and angry, and she's got Rico backing her up. This is going to get worse before it gets better. "Maybe you should back off. You made your point." I stopped sweeping and looked at him. "My point was that she shouldn't steal my car. My point wasn't that she shouldn't cheat on me, lie to me, and plan to clean out my bank account. We're nowhere near even." "Brent, she played me for months, Tyler. Months. While I was planning a future with her, she was planning to destroy me. You think I should just let that go?" Tyler held up his hands. "I think you should be careful. Revenge has a way of escalating." He was right, but I was past caring about escalation. Lila had started this war the day she decided to betray me. I was just going to finish it. That afternoon, I got a call from Jim Patterson, my lawyer. "I heard about the arrest," he said. "Congratulations. That took guts." "Thanks. I'm going to need your help with something else." "What's that?" "I want to sue her for the ballroom deposit. She put down $2,000 for a wedding venue without my consent, using money she claimed we didn't have. Now that the wedding's off, I want that money back." "That might be tricky. Did she use your money or hers?" "I don't know. That's what I want to find out." "I can file a small claim suit. It'll cost you a couple $100 in filing fees, but if she can't prove the money was legitimately hers, you might get it back." "Do it." "Brent, can I give you some advice?" "Sure." "Be careful how far you push this. You've already won. The wedding's off. You kept your car. She's facing criminal charges. Sometimes the smart play is to walk away." "I'll walk away when I'm ready to walk away." That evening, I decided to grab dinner at Murphy's Dive. I wanted to see how the story was playing among people who knew both me and Lila. The place was busier than usual for a Monday night. Danny was behind the bar, and he nodded when I walked in. "Hey, Brent, heard about what happened? That's rough." "Yeah, it's been a hell of a weekend." I ordered a burger and a beer and tried to mind my own business, but I could hear conversations at nearby tables. Apparently, the story of Lila's arrest was making the rounds, and opinions were divided. "I always thought she was too good for him," one woman was saying. "Maybe she was just trying to make something of herself." "By stealing his car?" her companion replied. "Come on, Sarah, that's messed up no matter how you slice it." "You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Maybe he was controlling, maybe she felt trapped." I wanted to turn around and set the record straight, but I forced myself to stay focused on my food. Let people think what they wanted to think. The truth would come out eventually. I was finishing my burger when Rico Moretti walked in. He was exactly what I'd expected. 6 feet tall, muscular, with the kind of tan that comes from spending serious money at a salon. He was wearing a tight black t-shirt that showed off his arms and jeans that probably cost more than I made in a week. Rico scanned the room until he spotted me, then walked over to my table. "You must be Brent," he said. "I'm Rico. I know who you are. Mind if I sit?" "Actually, I do." He sat down anyway. "We need to talk." "No, we really don't." "Look, I get it. You're pissed. Your girl was stepping out, and that hurts. But having her arrested? That's cold, man. That's really cold." I set down my beer and looked at him. Up close, he was younger than I'd thought. Maybe 28 or 29. His face had the kind of artificial perfection that comes from good genetics and better grooming. "My girl?" I said. "Is that what you think she was?" "I think she was a woman who wasn't getting what she needed at home, so she found someone who could give it to her. What she needed was $18,000 for my car and half my assets after a fraudulent marriage. Is that what you gave her?" Rico's confident expression flickered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You two had it all planned out. The wedding, the theft, the divorce. She'd get the money, you'd get the girl, and I'd get screwed. Nice plan. Too bad you're both idiots. You don't know anything about us. I know she was texting you while she was lying in my bed. I know you two were planning my financial destruction while I was planning a future with her. And I know that makes you both thieves." Rico leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You better watch how you talk to me." "Or what? You'll key my truck? Break my windows? Already been there, Rico. Your girlfriend's got a real creative streak when she's angry." "Lila didn't do that." "Right, it was the vandalism fairy." Rico stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're real smart, don't you? You think you won something?" "I think I dodged a bullet. 2 bullets, actually." "This isn't over." "Yeah, that's what Lila said. You two really are perfect for each other." Rico stared at me for another moment, then turned and walked out. The whole bar had gone quiet, watching our confrontation. As soon as the door closed behind him, conversations resumed, but I could feel eyes on me. Danny came over with another beer. "That was interesting," he said. "That was stupid. He's going to go back to Lila and tell her I humiliated him in front of a room full of people." "You think that's a problem?" "I think it's exactly what I wanted." The next morning, I got to work to find Rico waiting for me in the parking lot. He was leaning against a black Jeep Wrangler, arms crossed, trying to look intimidating. "We're not done talking," he said as I got out of my truck. "Yeah, we are." I walked toward the garage, but Rico stepped in front of me. "You embarrassed me last night." "You embarrassed yourself. I just watched." "You think you're funny? You think this is all some big joke?" I stopped walking and looked at him. "You know what I think is funny? I think it's funny that you fell for a woman who was planning to use me for money. What did you think was going to happen after she cleaned out my accounts? That she'd settle down with a gym manager and live happily ever after? She loves me. She loves money. You were just the entertainment." Rico took a step closer. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know she told you I was boring and predictable. I know she said you were exciting, but that exciting doesn't pay for the kind of life she wants. Face it, Rico. You were the side piece, not the main course." His face went red. "You're lying." "Am I? Ask her about the texts. Ask her what she really thought about your future together." Rico stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the doubt creeping into his expression. Maybe he was starting to realize that Lila had been playing both of us. "Stay away from her," he said finally. "Gladly, but you might want to ask yourself why she needed my money if she was so happy with you." He got in his Jeep and drove off, tires squealing. I watched him go, feeling satisfied. Doubt was a powerful weapon, and I'd just planted seeds of it in the relationship between my two enemies. Let them turn on each other. It would make my job easier. That afternoon, I got a call from Detective Santos. "We've got some developments in your case," she said. "Can you come down to the station?" I met her an hour later in a small conference room that smelled like coffee and frustration. "We arrested your ex-fiancée this morning," Santos said. "Vandalism, destruction of property, making terroristic threats. She's looking at some serious charges." "What about Rico?" "Harder to prove his involvement, but we're working on it." She opened a file folder. "There's something else. We've been investigating some other complaints about Ms. Chen and Mr. Moretti. Seems they've been running a little side business." "What kind of side business?" "Blackmail. They'd get people into compromising situations, take photos or video, then demand money to keep quiet about it." I thought about what Maddie had told me about Lila's secretive behavior, about the money she'd somehow found for the ballroom deposit. "How many victims?" At least 3 that we know of. Maybe more. We're still investigating. So she wasn't just planning to steal from me. Looks like theft was her primary source of income. Santos closed the file. The good news is, this strengthens your case. The bad news is, you might be called to testify in multiple trials. I can live with that. As I drove home, I felt a mixture of vindication and disgust. Lila hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been betraying people all over Cleveland. The woman I'd been planning to marry was a career criminal, but I wasn't done with her yet. Not by a long shot. The call came at 2 a.m, 3 days after Lila's second arrest. My phone rang, jolting me out of a deep sleep, and I saw Tyler's name on the caller ID. "Your garage is on fire," he said without preamble. I was dressed and in my truck in under 2 minutes, racing through empty streets toward Anwar's auto repair. I could see the orange glow from 3 blocks away. By the time I arrived, the fire department was already there, but it was too late. The main building was fully engulfed, flames shooting through the roof and windows. The heat was so intense I couldn't get within 50 yards of the place. I stood in the parking lot, watching 23 years of my working life go up in smoke, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Tyler found me there an hour later, still staring at the smoldering ruins. "I'm sorry, man," he said. "I know what this place meant to you." "Where's Anwar?" "On his way. I called him after I called you." "Insurance?" "Probably. But you know how that goes. They'll investigate, ask questions, try to find reasons not to pay." Fire Marshal Patricia Kowalski arrived as the flames were finally being brought under control. She was Tyler's cousin, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who'd been investigating fires for 15 years. "This was arson," she said after a preliminary walk-around. "Accelerant poured around the building, multiple ignition points. Someone wanted this place to burn fast and hot." "Any idea who?" "You tell me. Who have you pissed off lately?" I told her about Lila, about Rico, about the escalating series of retaliations. Kowalski listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small notebook. "Where were you tonight between midnight and 2 a.m.?" she asked. "At home, asleep." "Anyone who can verify that?" "No, I live alone now." "What about your ex-fiancée and her boyfriend?" "Lila's in jail, has been for 3 days. Rico?" I shrugged. "I have no idea where Rico was." "We'll find out." Anwar arrived just as the fire trucks were packing up. He took one look at the ruins of his business and sat down heavily on the bumper of his pickup truck. 40 years, he said quietly. 40 years I built this place. "I'm sorry, boss. This is my fault." "Your fault someone burns down my building?" "My fault for bringing this drama into your life." Anwar was quiet for a long time, staring at the smoking remains. Finally, he stood up and put his hand on my shoulder. "You know what we do now?" he said. "What?" "We rebuild, and we make sure whoever did this pays for it." The investigation moved quickly. Rico had an alibi. He was at a bar with friends until closing time, then went home with a woman who confirmed he'd been with her all night. But security cameras at a gas station 2 blocks from the garage showed a figure in dark clothes buying a gas can at 11:30 p.m. The figure was wearing a hood and kept their face turned away from the cameras, but the body type and movement suggested a woman about Lila's size. "She's in jail," I told Detective Santos when she called with the update. "She was released on bail yesterday afternoon," Santos replied. Apparently her lawyer argued that she wasn't a flight risk. "Yesterday afternoon? Why wasn't I notified?" "You're not family. We don't have to notify you of anything." I hung up and immediately called Tyler. "Lila's been out of jail since yesterday," I said. "Shit. Where is she now?" "I have no idea, but I'm going to find out." "Brent, don't do anything stupid. Let the police handle this." "The police let her out on bail after she tried to steal my car and vandalized my workplace. Now my garage is burned down and my boss is out 40 years of work. I think I'm done letting the police handle this." I spent the rest of the day making calls, trying to track down Lila's whereabouts. She'd been evicted from her apartment. Apparently the arrest and job loss had made it impossible to pay rent. Her car had been repossessed. According to Maddie, she'd been staying at Rico's place. Rico lived in a trendy loft downtown, the kind of place that cost $3,000 a month and came with a doorman. I drove by around 6 p.m. and saw his black Jeep in the parking garage. I parked across the street and settled in to wait. At 8:30, they came out together. Lila looked different, thinner, harder, with dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing clothes I didn't recognize, probably borrowed from Rico. They got in the Jeep and drove toward the east side of town. I followed at a distance, curious about where they were going. They ended up at a dive bar called Rosie's, the kind of place where people went to disappear for a while. I parked down the block and watched them through the window. They found a corner booth and sat close together, talking intensely. Rico looked agitated, gesturing with his hands. Lila kept looking around the bar like she expected trouble to walk through the door. After an hour, I decided I'd seen enough. But as I was getting ready to leave, Rico stood up and walked toward the men's room. Lila was alone. I made a decision that was probably stupid, but felt necessary. I got out of my truck and walked into the bar. Lila saw me coming and her face went white. She started to stand up, but I was already sliding into the booth across from her. "Hello, Lila. What do you want?" Her voice was shaky, but there was still defiance in it. "I want to know why you burned down my garage." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Security cameras say otherwise. You bought a gas can at the Shell station on Euclid Avenue at 11:30 last night. 2 hours later, Anwar's auto repair was in flames." She tried to look confused, but her acting skills weren't that good. "You're crazy." "Am I? Let me tell you what I think happened. You got out of jail yesterday, furious that your little scheme had blown up in your face. You wanted to hurt me, but you couldn't get to my house or my car because the police are watching, so you went after my workplace instead." "Prove it." "I don't have to prove it. The police will do that. But I wanted to look you in the eye and ask you one question." "What?" "Was it worth it? Was whatever you thought you were going to get from me worth destroying your entire life?" Lila stared at me for a moment, and I saw something crack in her expression. For just a second, she looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with. Vulnerable, uncertain, maybe even sorry. Then Rico came back from the bathroom, and the moment was gone. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded, sliding into the booth next to Lila. "Just having a conversation with my ex-fiancé about arson. You need to leave, now." "Actually, I was just going." I stood up and looked down at both of them. "Enjoy the rest of your evening. I have a feeling it might be one of your last as free citizens." I walked out of the bar feeling oddly satisfied. I'd seen fear in both their faces, and fear was good. Fear made people make mistakes. The next morning, Detective Santos called with news. "We got a match on the fingerprints from the gas can," she said. "Your ex-fiancée is going down for arson." "When are you arresting her?" "We tried this morning. She's gone. Cleared out of Rico's place sometime during the night. He claims he doesn't know where she went." "You believe him?" "I think he's scared. Arson is a felony, and if he helped her or knew about it, he could be charged as an accessory. My guess is she ran to protect him. Or he threw her under the bus to protect himself. That's possible, too." I hung up and sat in my truck, thinking. Lila was in the wind, which meant she was desperate. Desperate people were dangerous, but they were also predictable. She'd need money, transportation, and a place to hide. Money was a problem. Her accounts were probably frozen, and she couldn't get a job with pending felony charges. Transportation was a bigger problem. Her car was gone, and she couldn't rent one without a credit card. That left one option. She'd have to steal what she needed. I thought about what Lila would consider valuable and portable. Jewelry, electronics, cash. And I thought about where she might go to get those things. My house. I called Tyler. "I think Lila's going to try to break into my place," I said. "Why would she do that?" "Because she's desperate and stupid, and she probably thinks I keep cash around. Plus, she knows the layout, knows my schedule, knows I'm not there during the day." "So what do you want to do?" "I want to be ready for her." That afternoon, Tyler and I set up surveillance at my house. We parked his car down the block with a clear view of my driveway and settled in to wait. "This is probably a waste of time," Tyler said around 4 o'clock. "Maybe, but if I'm right..." "There." Tyler pointed toward my backyard. "Someone just went over your fence." I grabbed the binoculars and focused on my back door. A figure in dark clothes was crouched next to the sliding glass door, working on the lock. "It's her," I said. "You sure?" "I'm sure. Call Santos." Tyler made the call while I watched Lila break into my house. She was inside for maybe 10 minutes before she came back out, carrying a duffel bag that looked heavy. "Santos is on her way," Tyler said. "What do you want to do?" "I want to end this." I got out of the car and walked toward my house. Lila was coming around the side of the building when she saw me. She froze like a deer in headlights. "Going somewhere?" I asked. She dropped the duffel bag and ran. I chased her across my front yard and into the street where Detective Santos was just pulling up in her unmarked car. Lila saw the car and tried to change direction, but she tripped over a fire hydrant and went down hard on the asphalt. Santos was out of her car with handcuffs before Lila could get back to her feet. "Lila Chen, you're under arrest for burglary, arson, and violation of bail conditions." As Santos read her rights, I picked up the duffel bag Lila had dropped. Inside, I found my laptop, my spare cash from the kitchen drawer, and several pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother. "Find everything you were looking for?" I asked as Santos put Lila in the back of the patrol car. Lila looked at me through the window, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I saw real defeat in her eyes. "I loved you," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "You loved what you thought you could take from me. There's a difference." As Santos drove away with Lila, Tyler clapped me on the shoulder. "Feel better now?" "Getting there," I said, "but there's still Rico." Rico Moretti made his move 3 days later, and it was exactly as stupid as I'd expected. I was working late at the temporary garage space Anwar had rented while we dealt with insurance claims and rebuilding plans. It was nearly 10 p.m., and I was the only one there, which was probably what Rico was counting on. I heard his Jeep pull into the parking lot, the engine rumbling with the kind of aggressive exhaust note that screamed compensating for something. Through the window, I watched him get out and look around, making sure he was alone. He wasn't. Tyler was parked across the street in an unmarked security company van, and Detective Santos was stationed around the corner. We'd been expecting this confrontation for days. Rico walked up to the front door and tried the handle. When it didn't open, he knocked. "We're closed," I called out. "Open up, Brent. We need to talk." "Talk about what?" "About you destroying my life." I opened the door but kept the chain latch engaged. Rico was standing there in his usual uniform of tight black t-shirt and expensive jeans, but he looked different. Haggard. Desperate. "Your life was already destroyed," I said. I just pointed it out. "Lila's in jail because of you. Lila's in jail because she committed multiple felonies. I didn't make her steal cars or burn down buildings. You set her up. You manipulated the whole situation." I gave her exactly what she asked for. She wanted to sell my car, so I let her try. She wanted to hurt me, so I let her show her true colors. Everything that happened after that was her choice. Rico pushed against the door, testing the chain. "You think you're so smart. You think you won." "I think I dodged a bullet. 2 bullets, actually. This isn't over." "Yeah, you keep saying that. But here's the thing, Rico. It is over. Lila's going to prison. Your little blackmail business is shut down. Your gym is under investigation. You've got nothing left to threaten me with. I've got these." He held up his hands, clenched into fists. I almost laughed. "You're going to punch me? That's your master plan?" "I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Then we'll see how smart you feel." "Okay." I closed the door, undid the chain, and opened it again. "Come on in." Rico stepped inside, looking surprised that I wasn't running away. The garage space was smaller than our old place, with 2 service bays and a cramped office. Not much room to maneuver. "You sure you want to do this?" I asked. "I've been wanting to do this for weeks." "All right then, but before you start swinging, let me show you something." I walked over to the workbench and picked up my tablet. Rico followed, probably thinking I was going to try to hit him with it. Instead, I opened up a video file. "Recognize this?" I asked, turning the screen toward him. It was security footage from Murphy's Dive, showing Rico and Lila in what was clearly an intimate conversation. The timestamp showed it was from 2 months ago, back when I was still planning to marry her. "So what?" Rico said. "We were talking. Keep watching." The video showed Rico leaning over to whisper in Lila's ear. She laughed and put her hand on his chest. Then she looked around to make sure no one was watching and kissed him. "That's from February 15th, I said, 2 weeks after she accepted my proposal. Want to see more?" I swiped to the next video. This one showed them leaving the bar together, getting into Rico's Jeep. "I've got 12 hours of footage," I said. "Parking lots, hotel lobbies, restaurants. You two weren't as careful as you thought." Rico's face was getting red. "Where did you get this?" "I have friends who were concerned about my welfare and decided to do some investigating on their own." It was a lie, but a convincing one. The truth was that Tyler had pulled the security footage after Lila's arrest, when we were building a case against both of them, but Rico didn't need to know that. "You've been watching us for months?" "I've been protecting myself from a woman who was planning to rob me blind and a man who was helping her do it. I never helped her steal anything." "No? What about the blackmail business? What about the fake references you gave her when she applied for bartending jobs? What about the burner phone you bought her so she could communicate with victims without being traced?" Rico's expression changed. "How do you know about that?" "I know about all of it. The police know about all of it. You're going down, Rico. The only question is how hard you want to make it on yourself." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I swiped to another video file. This one showed Rico and Lila meeting with a man in a parking lot, exchanging what looked like photographs for cash. That's Marcus Webb, the city councilman. He paid you $5,000 to keep quiet about his affair with his campaign manager. The police have the photos, the bank records showing the deposit, and testimony from Webb himself. Rico took a step back. He agreed to testify? He agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. Turns out politicians don't like being blackmailed any more than regular people do. This is impossible. We were careful. You were amateurs, and now you're finished. Rico stood there for a moment, processing the fact that his entire criminal enterprise had been exposed. I could see him trying to figure out his options, and I could tell he was coming to the same conclusion I'd reached. He had none. That's when he decided to get violent. He came at me fast, swinging a right hook that would have taken my head off if it had connected. But I'd been expecting it, and I was ready. I ducked under the punch and came up with an uppercut that caught him in the solar plexus. Rico doubled over, gasping for air, and I followed up with a knee to his face that sent him sprawling backward into a tool cart. "Stay down," I said. Instead, he grabbed a wrench from the scattered tools and swung it at my head. I caught his wrist and twisted until he dropped the wrench, then shoved him backward into the wall. I said, "Stay down." Rico wiped his nose and glared at me. "You think this is over? You think beating me up solves anything?" "I think it's a good start." "There are other people involved in this, people you don't know about. They're not going to be happy that you destroyed their business." "What other people?" "Wouldn't you like to know?" I was about to ask him to elaborate when the front door opened and Detective Santos walked in, followed by Tyler. "Gentlemen," Santos said, looking around at the scattered tools and Rico's red face. "Having a little disagreement?" "Mr. Moretti was just leaving," I said. "Actually, Mr. Moretti was just getting arrested." Santos pulled out her handcuffs. "Rico Moretti, you're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, and about 6 other charges I'll read you on the way to the station." As Santos cuffed him, Rico looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he said. "Yeah, it is." I walked over to where he was standing and looked him in the eye. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Rico. You thought you could take shortcuts. You thought you could steal and cheat and intimidate your way to the good life. But I build things. I fix things. And when someone tries to tear down what I've built, I rebuild it stronger. You got lucky. I got smart. There's a difference." Santos led Rico toward the door, but he stopped and turned back to me. "You want to know the truth about Lila?" he said. "She never loved you, not for 1 second. You were just a mark to her, a way to get money. She used to laugh about how pathetic you were, how easy it was to manipulate you." "I know," I said. "I read the texts, remember?" "She said you were the most boring man she'd ever met. She said being with you was like being married to a piece of furniture. And yet she was planning to marry me anyway. What does that say about her?" Rico didn't have an answer for that. Santos pushed him out the door and into her patrol car. Tyler watched them drive away, then turned to me. "Feel better now?" "Yeah," I said, and for the first time in months, I really meant it. "I do." The next morning, I got a call from Jim Patterson, my lawyer. "Good news," he said. "The insurance company is going to pay out on the garage fire. Full replacement value plus business interruption coverage." That is good news. There's more. Lila's been offered a plea deal. 7 years for the arson, burglary, and fraud charges. Her lawyer thinks she's going to take it. What about Rico? He's looking at 10 to 15. The blackmail charges are serious, and he's got priors we didn't know about. Assault, fraud, theft. This guy's been running scams for years. Any word on these other people he mentioned? The FBI is investigating. Turns out your little neighborhood blackmail operation was part of something bigger. Rico and Lila were small fish in a very big pond. I hung up feeling satisfied, but not quite finished. There was one more thing I needed to do. That afternoon, I drove to the county jail where Lila was being held. I'd never visited anyone in jail before, and the process was more complicated than I'd expected. But eventually, I found myself sitting in a small room across from the woman who'd planned to destroy my life. Lila looked terrible. She'd lost weight, her hair was unwashed, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't been sleeping well. The orange jumpsuit didn't help. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I wanted to see how you were doing." "How do you think I'm doing?" "I'm in jail, Brent. I'm probably going to prison for 7 years." "That's your choice." "My choice? You destroyed my life. I gave you every opportunity to make the right decision. You chose to steal, to lie, to commit arson. Those were your choices." She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "I really did love you," she said. "At first. What changed? You were so Predictable. So satisfied with your little life, your little garage, your little dreams. I wanted more than that. So you decided to take it from me. I decided to take it with you. The wedding, the honeymoon, the house. I wanted us to have those things together. By stealing my car and planning to divorce me after you got access to my assets, she looked surprised that I knew about that part of the plan. Rico told you about that? Rico didn't tell me anything. I figured it out myself. You were never supposed to find out. That's what made it okay? That I wouldn't know I was being robbed? It wasn't robbery. We were going to be married. Married people share everything. Married people share decisions too. They don't make major financial choices behind each other's backs. Lila was crying now, but I felt no sympathy for her. These weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. I'm sorry, she said. I'm really, really sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your plan didn't work, but you're not sorry you tried to steal from me. That's not true. If I hadn't caught you, you'd be married to me right now, planning your exit strategy. You'd be figuring out how to take half of everything I've worked for and run off with your boyfriend. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. I stood up to leave. Brent, wait. I turned back to her. What happens now? She asked. Now you serve your time and hopefully learn something from it. And I go back to my life. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about that question for a moment. Forgiveness was supposed to be healing, supposed to help you move on, but some things didn't deserve forgiveness. No, I said. I don't think I will. I walked out of the jail and into the afternoon sunshine, feeling like I'd closed the last chapter of a very ugly book. 6 months later, Anwar and I reopened the garage in a new location. Business was better than ever. Apparently, the story of my revenge had made the rounds, and people liked the idea of supporting someone who'd stood up to criminals. The Mustang was still in my garage at home, still perfect, still the one thing in my life that had never lied to me. I never saw Lila or Rico again. She got her 7 years, he got 12. The FBI investigation led to the arrest of 14 other people involved in various blackmail and fraud schemes across Ohio. Tyler still stops by with coffee and donuts, and we still argue about sports and politics and whether I should start dating again. I'm not ready for that yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. For now, I'm content with my work, my car, and the knowledge that when someone tried to destroy me, I fought back and won. Some people might call it revenge. I call it justice. Either way, it felt pretty damn good.